back, everybody, to another episode of Agents of MACE. Today is a special episode because we're dipping a little bit outside of our norms, taking a step outside of the canon MCU into the dark and unknown Sony Marvel universe. We're going to be talking about Morbius, so if you haven't seen it, spoiler warning.
He's a vampire.
Jazz. Oh my god. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, definitely. I mean, I don't know. If you're into it, go see it. If you're,
I don't really know if any theaters are playing it anymore. I feel like maybe some smaller theaters may pick it up just as like a later, like weekend Showtime thing. But
well, you didn't miss much if you haven't seen it. So
yeah.
You can
listen
to the review and decide for yourself.
Maybe determine, do I really want to subscribe to Stars to watch this?
Exactly. Yeah. Is it worth it? So yeah, let's do like a quick breakdown, I guess, of the movie, and well, let's do our first thoughts first, and then we'll do a quick breakdown of the movie, like key points, and then we'll dive into the movie instead of reciting the whole movie. First thoughts were, it's very apparent that they wanted to do something scary. It's very apparent that whoever sat down and wrote the script was like, let's make a horror. But then I feel like it just didn't, it wasn't scary enough to be scary. It wasn't funny enough to be funny. It wasn't actiony enough to be like an action movie. It's like it didn't know what it wanted to be in the end. And also somehow they didn't have enough time. Like, especially towards the end. I mean, maybe that's just what all things suffer from now. But it seemed like the last third of this movie, they just kind of glazed over things for the sake of getting the information in our faces before the stuff happened. So I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I'm interested to see what the outcome of this will be and how it will affect the greater universe of Marvel. So that's my first thoughts.
Let's get the first thoughts. You have to think about this because it's been a minute. This one's been out for a while now. I'm gonna have to be careful what I say to compare to some things, but yeah, it's fine. Look, it's not a good movie by any means, but I wouldn't really call it a bad movie. There are a lot of promising moments and some very cool things within this. You know, it's just kind of going in like, I guess the hardest thing is like, you know, I grew up with this character. I like knew about this character from The Amazing Spider-Man, and then you kind of get into the whole Blade, and you realize like, oh, well, this character is also kind of within the Blade universe. So like, it's hard for me to turn off my brain of like, could they like connect this to Blade in any way? But no, they didn't really want to go that route. Yeah, I mean, I was intrigued through the whole thing. Definitely, when we get to the post mid-credit scenes, those are the highlights. Because those, those are like got me really excited because there's no telling where they could go with this. But I do wish they would have tapped into the horror just a little bit more, because there's a couple of scenes that they could have like really gone like so cool in terms of horror, and it just kind of like, I just needed more of that.
All right, Elisa, you're up.
So, when you were listing all of the things that this movie wasn't quite enough of to be Drew, the first thought that came to my mind was, it is certainly blue enough to be a music video. And I think that truly the highest compliment that I can pay this movie is that it gave us the Matt Smith fan reel that we've all been wanting for many, many years. That Matt Smith is good in this movie. He's not given much to do, but he is very charming. as always. Very dancey in some scenes, whether that was necessary or not. In this movie, that appears that they cut down to the bone. I felt like they just had gobs of stuff that they shot that did not make the final cut of this. They decided that they absolutely had to have the little snake dance in here. And it was worth it. Again, best part of the movie. I just, as far as characters go, nah, there weren't. There weren't. And character arcs, certainly not. And as you said, it just feels like they didn't put enough into anything. They must have had a lot of talks about what they were hoping to do with this movie. Like you said, somebody had to have been like, this needs to be a Marvel-based horror movie. Great. But we don't want to make this an R-rated movie because then a lot of people can't go see it. Also, we don't want it to be too alienating for people that were trying to get to see our more mainstream, not Marvel movies, like Venom, a potential further Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie. And if they're trying to connect it to the universe, it seems very, very different in a lot of ways, like tonally and the content from what they already had. And so what we wind up with is kind of a misshapen mess. It's not entirely anyone's fault. It's a lot of tiny fault being shared amongst many people.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So that's where I am on Morbius.
So a quick rundown of the plot, I guess. So Morbius has a rare disease. He wants to cure it. He cures it by splicing bat genes into people genes, and learns very quickly that somehow he has become a vampire with all of the powers, I guess, of a bat, and some that we're not really sure how he gets them, but because bats can't do that.
Bats don't smoke.
So he gets the powers, and then he makes this serum that's going to save everybody, and then he realizes the powers aren't great, so he's not going to give it to anyone. His best friend, who also has the disease, steals the powers, becomes the villain of the movie. They fight a couple times.
They dance a couple times.
Morbius kills him, and that's the end of the movie. So
there's a lot of blue blood, fake blood.
Yes, I don't understand the alien cyborg milk blood. Like
Capri Sun blood.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like little bags. Like
they seem to put a lot of time into explaining the blood issue. But before we get too far away from the beginning, so when it's showing young Morbius and his friend, what's his friend's name?
He calls him Milo.
Milo, that's right.
Yeah.
But his name
he
isn't
names
Milo.
him Milo, which is not his name, and was in fact the name of a child who was many children ago.
Right.
Yeah.
In the continuity of this movie.
Essentially, every future child that takes over this bed is automatically called Milo.
Yeah. So he and Milo, my biggest problem with them was they don't say Michael's name for so long that I just kept thinking that, like, oh, surely the new kid is Morbius. Like, this is his backstory or whatever, but, like, he's the new kid that's now called Milo, and he's going to turn into Morbius. And then after, like, the third flashback or something, they finally say his name. They say Michael. And I was like, whoa, hold on. So this other kid is Morbius? This whole time I thought that the Milo kid was Morbius, because they seem to focus on him. The movie's called Morbius. Why are you not giving us names and focusing on somebody who's not the main character of the movie. I didn't understand that. It took me right out of it. I was like, nope.
Maybe it was kind of a weak attempt to have a point of view character. Be like, hey, audience, you're just meeting Morbius. Let's have you go with this kid to meet Morbius. This kid who, again, he renames him. How are they friends? If he's like, I'm not even going to learn your name because everybody who comes in here dies, and I don't want to get attached to any of y'all, so I'm just going to call you a different name. Okay, bye.
Yep. In and out. Done.
So his name is Lucius Crown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lucius. That's right.
It's like Lucius, nah, Milo.
Yeah, I hated that. Every time they did a flashback, I was like, I don't care anymore. I don't, like, get me out of this. Go back to being a vampire. Which, like, I definitely thought he was going to turn into a vampire much later in the movie. But I think that is the very first scene of the movie, right? Where he's like, they land.
The very first scene is when he's going to pick up his bats.
Yeah.
Which we did not need to see him go get those bats.
Right.
Yeah, that was interesting opening. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, well, I was expecting it, but, like, later in the movie. I don't know. It seemed very quick to get.
Yeah,
him. They
but
were
it's
like,
also like,
just make him a vampire. Hurry up.
It's not a very long movie.
Yeah, that's true.
One of its saving graces. It's very short.
Well, once they're on the ship is when we start getting more of these, like, horror elements, which they tried to do with the bats, but it was like, they're just bats. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Bruce Wayne. I'm not scared of them. So I don't know. But then once they get on the ship and he, like, transforms and is, like, horror movie killing all these people, like Predator style, it took me back to those movies like Predator and Alien, where it's like, even Terminator, right? Like, I know that when that movie came out, it came out as a horror movie. They were like, oh, aliens, and the Predator is, like, scary and he's stealing people and killing. But, like, watching them now, you're like, well, yeah, that's like an action movie, right? It's like a goofy 80s action movie. You don't think about it as like a horror movie. And I feel like that's what happened with this movie, where they did all these scary things, but then they would quickly turn it into, like, an action, like, fight scene. And it was like, well, what do you want this to be? Do you want me to be scared of Morbius, or do you want me to be, like, rooting for Morbius? I'm so confused as to what this movie wanted us to do with Morbius.
They kind of said they set the crew up as kind of being jerks a little bit, like they're kind of rude to them. So I guess it means they deserve to die horribly on the boat.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like they like introduced the detectives, which were like, the one guy had like a cybernetic arm, and it was like, oh, okay, this is going to be something. Never anything. He never even used a fancy robot arm. So what was the point? And maybe that's what you're saying, is like, maybe they shot more and there were other things that happened, but like, we didn't see it, so it kind of seemed like they forgot that they did that, or they didn't know what they wanted to do with it. I don't know.
I hope we get I'm just gonna say it. We need a director's cut.
9x3 or
like
9x13.
Give us like a 2.5 hour like solid Morbius movie. I think some of it,
Is it out there? Was there a solid movie that they cut out?
No, I don't know. I just want to know, like, what were some of the original, like, maybe plots that they had, because it feels like they needed to write this to connect. Like, it's just a traditional story. I mean, it's basically like, here are two friends growing up, but one's going to be good, one's going to be bad, and eventually they're going to have to face off with each other. Like, we've seen that countless times. Like, could there have been something with more depth to it than just that?
Right. But also, Morbius isn't even good. He's a villain.
Yeah.
So like,
but is he? Because it's like,
Just because
Well,
he
I
killed
mean,
those
the whole
8
movie-
people doesn't mean he killed all the people.
The whole movie is him like, I'm gonna stay good. I will be good. I'm not evil. Like I'm not gonna do this.
But
While
they're
managing
setting
to
him up
look so creepy the whole movie.
Yeah, right. They're setting him up to be a villain. I don't know. It's just, it's like with all Marvel movies now, they want the villain to be as exciting and amazing as Thanos was. But guess what? There wasn't a Thanos movie.
Yeah.
They didn't do Thanos and like try to make us like Thanos for a whole movie and then surprise he's the villain, because that's not how it works. You don't need to make me like Morbius and then later you're going to flip him and make him a Spider-Man villain. Like, he's a villain, so if anything, this should have been like Spider-Man's intro movie back into Sony. And like, sure, you can call it Morbius and it can be mostly about Morbius, his like origins or whatever, but like the story should have been Spider-Man, you know? Like,
It's almost like
sense.
We needed a like detective Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That could have been cool.
I mean, anything would have been better than what we got, which was a bunch of nothing that was just like interlaced shots of Morbius being a smart scientist and Morbius being a scary Dracula and drinking fake blood out of a bag. Like, they spent so much time on the fake blood thing and the like, oh, I have to drink the blood, but I have to drink it more now because it's fake. But if I drink regular blood, then it's fine. And then he just had powers.
Yeah.
They didn't explain the powers. It was just like all of a sudden he had powers. Like when he jumps in front of the train and flies, they like built it up as this like, oh, he's sensing the air come towards him and somehow that triggers in him to jump in front of the train. Like, none of that is explained. I'm a huge proponent of the like montage of a superhero learning their powers. I love it. In any movie it's in, I'm all about it. This movie did not do that. Instead, it was just like he learned he had powers in the middle of a fight and he used the powers to perfection. And it was like, what? How does he know how to do that? All you've done so far is tell me that he is like, he spent 2 weeks learning that he needed to drink blood more often because it's fake. Like, but yet he knows he can jump in front of a train and fly expertly immediately the first time.
I don't know how the bat powers gave him abs. That's not... Bats are not renowned for their musculature. And it doesn't... This does not have to make sense. I promise I'm not expecting this movie to make sense. I don't really expect any like comic book, fantasy, sci-fi movie to totally make sense. But this does a whole lot of not making sense. Like, to the point of not always being able to totally follow what's happening in the movie. Like, not to get too far ahead of myself, but does he take over a counterfeit money operation and turn it into a science lab?
Yep.
Pretty much, yeah.
But it's...
I like had to look it up really quick because I was like, I don't know if I've ever heard of vampire bats killing a person before. No, I mean, outside of like them biting somebody and them getting rabies, you know?
Yeah, right.
But like, I don't think that vampire bats could swarm and kill a person. And that is a big thing at the beginning when he's like catching the bats. He's like, oh, you better watch out, like a bunch of those could kill a person. And it's like, oh, okay, we're supposed to be like, oh, they're vampire bats, and so when he splices the bat genes with his genes, then he is going to get vampire powers. And it's like, vampire bats aren't vampires. Like, I understand the like he can like commune with them or whatever, you know, like he can stand in there and they don't bite him. Okay, whatever. But how does that turn into he has like crazy like citywide sonar? Like, I don't know, again, I'm not like a bat expert, but I highly doubt that a bat can use its sonar to hear like one person talking faintly on the other side of a city. Like,
but you know what, that was kind of cool. I do like how they did the sonar, but
it was cool.
I mean, I get your point.
If they wanted to explain how his powers work, they should have explained how his powers work. Or if they didn't want to, they shouldn't. But it's like they chose to explain some of them, and then other ones, they just worked. They were just like, yeah, no, he can turn into a bunch of bats. What? Can bats do that? Can bats turn into a bunch of little bats? Like, what is that power? I don't understand.
Also, I could be misinterpreting this whole setup wrong, but it looks like he might be mean to the bats he takes back to the lab because they don't even have a place to rest. Like, there's no bat perch in there. There's nothing. It's just like a bat wind tunnel, and they're just like in constant fly. I was pretty distressed for the bats watching the movie.
Yeah, and then also like he goes in there and he pulls one out and kills it and pins it to a board to do tests. Like, he was definitely not nice to those bats, and yet somehow they accepted him as one,
as a brother,
their own, right?
Boy, the dialogue in this movie is something else.
Yeah,
and that's the other thing is like I'm not a fan of a movie that thinks I'm dumb, and I feel like this movie thought I was dumb. And I think that maybe it's I mean, I know it happens in a lot of movies, but I feel like it happens a lot more in these like Sony Marvel movies, because the same goes for the Venom movies, where it's like they explain things that I'm like, why did you explain that? Like, I get it, I understand, I'm well aware that like this is the orphanage that Cletus is from. Like, I get it. He doesn't have to be like, remember this orphanage when we were orphans? Like, why did you say that? Like, I know where you are. So in this movie, I feel like did the same thing, where it was like when he got in there and was like, the bats have accepted me as one of their brothers or whatever, and I was like, why are you saying this? Like,
who are you talking to, buddy?
Right, like we can understand that just by watching. So I think that's just another thing that I don't know. I mean, I went into it not expecting a whole lot and came out of it not surprised at what I got. I will agree with what you said, Luke, in your first thoughts, that like the best part of this movie was the end credits, but only because like the whole question I had with this movie was like, how are they going to tie this in, or are they going to tie this in?
Right.
And it seems like they leaned hard into tying it into Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But I still am on the fence about whether I think the Spider-Man movie, like the Sony Spider-Man movies, are going to be at all related to Marvel. Like the MCU, the Disney MCU, I should say.
Yeah, I don't expect that to happen. I think, if we just want to go right into the end credit scenes, but outside of the end credit scenes, like my whole favorite sequence was like the hospital hallway scene, because that one I thought was really well done, and I wanted more of that. More of that, like what's around the corner. Is it Morbius? Is it someone else? Could it have been a whole nother character? Like, what? They needed so much more of that.
Well, and that's the scene that they 100% stole from Moon Knight.
Yeah.
Like the running down the hallway and the light only turns on when you're right under it, which just seems like a flaw in design. But
turn around, there's Conchu.
And then you turn back around and it's Morbius. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and so I guess we can go ahead and talk about end credit stuff, which again, it's not like it's any real secret because so much was in the trailer, right? Vulture's there. We're getting more multiverse stuff, and and it's in a way it's clever. Yeah, it's because with No Way Home, we know like we brought in the Sony films into MCU, and so now we can transfer MCU into Sony films. So the real question is this actually like Garfield's universe?
Right.
Right? Because like we get a couple of scenes with Vulture where he basically just like appears in a prison, and then there's no record of him, so they're just basically viewing it as, well, this is a mistake, like you shouldn't be here, so there's no legal documents that you need to be in prison, so out you go.
Which, yeah, it just seems like that's not how it should work.
It feels irresponsible, but I don't know what the alternative is.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, how many psychiatrists are going to go through and interview Vulture to be like, who are you? Like, how'd you get there? Like, give us your MO, and like, let's try to determine, like, are you crazy and need to be there? Are you sane and leave?
Right. Should we keep you?
And then we get another one, and now he's got the suit.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is like, well, the suit didn't come with them, so where did he get the suit? Well, my theory is like, if this isn't Garfield's universe, we know from a post-credit scene that was setting up the Sinister Six that there is a Vulture suit in existence.
Right.
And that's my theory, is that if we are in Garfield, that's how he got the suit.
I think that I mean, I'm 100% on board with them giving Garfield another shot and doing some Andrew Garfield Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to stick with Tom Holland as long as they can. But I don't understand if these 3 Spider-Man movies that will be whatever next, I guess, at some point, are they all going to be Holland Spider-Man films? Or do you think they'll do like a Garfield film and then a Holland film, and then they'll have to do another film where like the multiverse opens up again so that he can go back to Disney? Like, it's very strange how they did it. Like, I get it, right? It's simple, it's easy. They multiverse split open, and so now they can kind of shuffle people around as needed. But I don't want that to be the norm. Like, I don't want it to be every 3 movies they got to send Spider-Man back over to Sony or back over to Disney. So they're like, a portal opens up and he goes through. Where is he? And then all of a sudden it's like, Marvel's Spider-Man 16 is coming out. And it's like,
wow.
Just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
where
also...
does Venom play in? Like...
Yeah, and which Venom's referenced, we haven't even really gone into like the Easter eggs throughout the film, but we have references to the Daily Bugle, we have references to Venom. We didn't even talk about really the school, which is essentially a nod to Xavier's School for the Gifted. It's like, so what are they trying to tease us with?
Right.
Also, to add on, it's like, if Garfield has already announced that he's more or less taking a break, what does that really mean? Is he only going to work on this in secrecy, or is he really just taking a break for a while?
Or is he taking a break because he just finished filming the next Spider-Man movie and now he's taking a break? Like, I
mean, he released 3 movies last year. Was it 3? Was it more than 3? It might
he may
just be a genuine break.
I mean, yeah, but he's got a series out right now.
Oh, yes,
and
I started watching. It's really good.
The subject matter, I don't blame him for taking a break. It's a very heavy show. But yeah.
I feel like this like setup movie, and same with the Sinister Six movie that I think is on the docket, right? If that movie doesn't include Spider-Man, I don't know that I will enjoy it. Because, like, I'm fine with you giving me a 5-minute breakdown of how the villain turned into the villain. I don't want to watch an 1.5 to 2 hour long movie about villains chatting with each other about how they should be villains together. And then the movie ends with like a tease to the next Spider-Man movie. Like, that doesn't sound interesting. So I don't know if this is like Sony's new thing, is that they're just trying to like build like, at least Venom is like an anti-hero, right? Like sometimes he's a good guy, sometimes he's a bad guy.
Yeah. But see, like they were trying to do that with, see, that's the question is like, they're kind of doing that with Morbius, but like, you know, the final post-credit scene, you know, Vulture finds him somehow. See, we don't know the time. Like, we don't know where this is going on, what time this is going on, what has Morbius done in between. Because, you know, his response is very like, I'm intrigued. So it's like, are you just full on evil now? Like, what has happened? What have you done?
Right. And or we also don't know like how long Vulture's been there. Like, has he been there a week? Has he been there a year? Like, if it is the Garfield universe, is he like in with Harry Osborn? And or I guess what, Harry's dead, right?
No, Harry was in prison.
Okay.
I can't remember the other character's name in Amazing Spider-Man. What was, you know, the guy, basically the guy behind the scenes that's setting everything up.
Oh, isn't it the Man in Black?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like is he a part of this again all of a sudden? It's just
well, I mean,
so
the whole the story, is it Fears, Gustav Fears? Like his whole story is really fascinating in terms of like Spider-Man and his relation with Spider-Man's parents. I think that would be, if they were going to continue, for me, I would want to finish out that story.
All these
they
Sony...
were,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, I just want Disney and Sony to work their stuff out. It's so frustrating having two Marvel universes bumping around, and one of them is getting increasingly not good. But they're about to take one of the best parts out of the MCU. And, come on, just figure your stuff out. Work together. You both make more money whenever you work together anyway.
Right, and well, that's the thing is, like, they... You know, whenever Marvel has made these Spider-Man movies, Sony is, like, a part of it, right? They get, like, a cut of the... They get the profits from the movie, or, like, a percentage of the profits from the movie, but nothing from the marketing or whatever. So... I get that they're probably like a little bit sour that they made a bad deal, but like
renegotiate the contract.
Either renegotiate or just sell it outright and be done and like do something else. Move on. Go buy DC and do stuff with them. I don't know.
Somebody needs to.
But like I feel like whenever Marvel, like when they switch it, right, and Sony's the one producing the movie, and they're like, oh, we do this with Marvel's go-ahead. Well, yeah, of course you do. Because Marvel's probably like, yeah, we don't care what you do because, like, we're not going to use that. Are you kidding? Like, and that's where when they brought Venom into the Spider-Man movie, it was like, uh-oh. But then they immediately sent him back. So then it was like, is this just them wiping their hands clean of the Sony stuff? And they're like, setting us up to be like, here, it's Sony's now, so like don't come to us if it's not good. So like, is any of this going to matter? Does Morbius matter in the long run whenever it does get worked out and Spider-Man goes back to Marvel? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
Are they just going to wipe the slate?
Who knows? I mean, there's just so much they can do with these characters. They just need to like figure this mess out, because I think what's bugging me is just like, you look at just the Sony's Marvel based films, it's just the structure and the writing. It just doesn't have this, you don't have the same kind of emotional feel like you do when watching a Marvel film,
right?
And it's like, how do you resolve that? If they can fix that, then maybe it's not as big of a deal. But
maybe, I mean, I think the writing would definitely help, because the story doesn't need to be said. And I think that's what Marvel does really well, is like they show you the story rather than tell you the story. And Sony does the opposite. They tell you the story rather than show you the story. So then half the time you're like, I don't know what's going on. because you're not explaining things. But then the things you are explaining, it's like, yeah, I'm not an idiot. I understand. Like, he's getting on a train and he's like, I think I'm going to take the train. Yeah, I get it. You're getting on the train. Like, I don't know. I think that Sony needs to realize that, like, they would make more money if they just let Disney keep the deal that they have. Disney makes all the movies. Sony gets a cut of the profits from the movies. You're taking a little bit of a loss, but I highly doubt you're taking the loss you're going to take if you make a bad Spider-Man movie and then try to, like, rally people for another Spider-Man movie. They're going to be like, no, like, you already made 4 crappy movies. Like, stop making more crappy movies. No one wants to see it. Like, even Morbius, like, I mean, when it came out, I kind of expected it to do well because it was something different. It wasn't another Venom. It wasn't another Spider-Man. It was like, I don't know, maybe it'll do well. It did not. No. Like, the first weekend was not good for Morbius. And it's like, that's got to be telling. You got to, like, I don't know. And it's not like comic book movies aren't doing well. Like, Spider-Man did really well. Doctor Strange just came out. It did really well. Like,
yeah, let's see. Morbius worldwide was 162.5 million.
That's horrible.
Opening weekend was 39 million in US and Canada.
The movie probably cost more to make than that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out how much it cost, but oof.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see if they bring it in somehow, or if Marvel is like, nice try, we'll cast our own Morbius, or maybe they'll keep Jared Leto. I don't know. I mean, he's kind of creepy.
But I tell you what I overheard at our showing of Morbius that was the greatest thing ever.
No.
Okay, so it was at the end credits just happened. It was us and like a couple maybe, and then another couple. And the other people who were there were a little bit older. And as I was walking out, I walked past this lady, and she goes, I don't get it. Why is Batman here?
Oh, man. That's pretty solid.
Yep.
Well, I hope our glowing review helps you inform your decision if you want to go see Morbius or not. But, you know, if not, no hard feelings from us.
Right. Which, again, I guess we're only betting that this is going to stream on Starz. I'm curious to where this will end up. I wonder if, like, HBO would get it.
Probably. I would assume HBO would get it, or Netflix, depending on who wants to grab the rights.
Netflix.
But Netflix is good.
Yeah. Because I guess, Sony, it's the Sony Netflix deal.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So. Does that mean that Netflix is also going to get No Way Home whenever it's streaming?
That's a good question.
Or will it never stream anywhere?
Probably not. Not for like a year to make sure people buy it.
It's saying Starz.
Just go to Disney Plus. What's the point of Disney Plus if you don't have the Disney movies on there? Thanks a lot, Sony. Well, thank you guys for listening this week. Hopefully we'll have better news next week and to go over what's coming next on the docket for the MCU. I know we've gotten a couple new trailers for movies. We've gotten a couple new trailers for the series. So we'll be sure to break all that down, get everyone extra hyped.
And we have our review of Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
Don't forget about Mom.
Yes. Our review for the multiverse, which we can talk about when we want to release that too. But that's not for you listeners to hear. So, any snazzy one-liners this week? Although I feel like we, where's Batman here? That was pretty good. I don't really know any great ones from the movie.
No, there aren't any.
Yeah.
I am Venom.
There you go.
No, it's just me, your friend Michael Morbius.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.